Okay, in this video we're going to talk about how to make an email, HTML email, or an e-blast. So if you hear me refer it as an e-blast, that's what it is. It's an HTML email. What that is, if you don't know what that is, it's basically a graphic that is converted so that you can see that graphic in an email form. Rather than going to a web page, you can see it when you get your email. Like if you get a red box, or if you get any of these emails from Office Max or whatever, those are a lot of times HTML emails that let you see the graphics of what they're trying to promote or push. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to make an HTML email. Now this is a little bit more advanced, but I'm getting requests for a lot of different stuff, and so I thought this would be fun, especially doing a complete project. Showing all the work over, the mess ups, everything that I do, so that you can see how to make a email campaign. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it because I don't want to waste too much of your time. But what this is going to be is really fun. So first off, what I'm going to do is I've got a document here, and let's talk a little bit about what size an email campaign should be. The width should be no wider than 1,000 pixels. I'm actually going to drop it down to 980. And then I'm going to make it a little taller. I'm going to make it 1200. And if you notice when I type that, these things change. The numbers, the pixels change when I typed it. So I need to turn off constrained proportions. So I'm going to go back and do 980 and 1200. And when I hit OK, now you see I have looks like a regular page. But this is, just remember that it needs to be in pixels. Don't do it in percent. Don't do it in inches. And the main thing is to make sure that it's 72 dpi. You do not want it any higher than that, or it will be huge and take forever when you're getting ready to move it to an email campaign. So just FYI, this is the best way to do it. You can do it wider or more skinny and smaller, but this is what I'm doing. So to get started, I'm going to do a few things. First of all, I'm going to unlock the background layer, and I'm going to create a new layer. And now that I've created this new layer, the company that I'm going to do it for is for a pickleball company, which is basically, it's like tennis and ping pong. I don't really want to, people go, well, what is pickleball? Look it up. You can go to pickleballplanet.com and you can take a look at what is pickleball. That's actually a site that I own. So if you want to play a sport that's fun, but it's kind of like mixed between ping pong and tennis, and check it out. Anyway, so I'm going to make an email campaign or at least a graphic for my campaign in Photoshop. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paint the background black. Now the reason I'm going to paint it black is I'm going to open up my file and you'll see my logo. Let me find my logo here. I don't know if this one's it. Let's see. Yeah, that's it for my YouTube. That'll work. Let's see. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up. And all I'm doing now is that when I open it opened in another tab. There's a few different ways that you can, this is a good thing anyways, I'll show you. There's a few different things you can do. You can move this over and it'll be another window. I do that out of habit. You can highlight everything, make sure that the logo is the one selected. You can copy and paste it that way. So I could copy it and I can paste it, and you can see there it is in the document. Or you can also have your move tool selected right here, and you can drag it over there and let it go, and it'll be on there. So what I'm going to do is copy over my logo. And now that I got my logo, it's too big, so I'm going to scale it down. So I'm going to do Command T on the Apple and just hold Shift down so that it scales proportional. And I'm going to scale it down to about right there. That looks good. The other thing that I want to do is I want to have stars in the background. Rather than going to Google and taking a picture of some stars, I'm just going to put one in. I'm just going to make some. So what we're going to do is we're going to call this layer stars, and I'm going to go to the filter tool, and from the filter tool I'm going to noise, and I'm going to add some noise. And what that's going to do is it's going to make it look like there's a bunch of little scratches and noise, because that's what it is. I'm gonna brighten it up quite a bit, and by default it's like this. Make sure you have it on monochromatic, that way it's only black and white, and that looks pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and now I'm gonna go to the layer, and I'm gonna go to image and adjustments, brightness, contrast, and I'm gonna bring the brightness down and the contrast up. I'm going to bring it down even more. That looks pretty good. Let's do it one more time. Adjustment and brightness down, contrast up. And that's looking good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the levels. Oh, before I do that, I'm going to try to make this just a little bit, well, it's for an e-blast, so that's okay. So what I'm going to do now is, this is black, this is blue. I want to change it a little bit, but right now I'm going to bring up the levels, and if you want to use the command keys, it's Command L, and that'll bring up levels. And I'm going to darken these even more, and the output be a little bit darker. So now it's starting to look more like skies. A few things that we might want to put in here is, actually let's do let's do another layer. So I'm going to go ahead and drag another layer. I've got a copy. We'll call this one flares. So now that I've got flares in there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I don't know if I want to, okay, I'm not going to worry about that. I was going to do an adjustment layer, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just go to the filter, and I'm going to go to render and lens flare. So filter, render, lens flare. And from there you can see I've got a little lens flare. I'm going to bring it up just a little bit, and if you click you can move it, and I kind of want it about right there, maybe a little brighter. It might be too bright. All right, there we go, and that looks pretty good. Actually, I'm going to undo that, go back to filter, and under render, lens flare, you know what, I'm going to have it come across this way. Go, okay, there we go. I like that. That looks a little bit better, because now we've got the gradient kind of light. Let's go in there. Now let's change the color of this flare and the background. So I'm going to hold down Command and do U, and Command U. Now I'm going to change the saturation. So I'm going to bring this down a little. Oh, that's the lightness. Don't want to do that. I want to leave that where it was at. I want to bring the saturation. Actually, I do want to bring it up just a little. And I'm gonna make this a, let's go kind of a, let's do a blue, because that's kind of what I've got. Go blue, maybe not that blue. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead back to the blues now, and I'm going to make it even more blue. And really, well, I don't want to have it blow out too much. Oh, you know, one thing too, if it's not changing as much as you want, one of the things to do, so we'll go ahead and cancel. I'm going to go back to it and hit colorize. That'll make it go a little faster. So I'm going to go ahead and make it red and blue. See how much easier that turns when you colorize it. Alright, that looks pretty good. So now I'm also going to inverse this a little bit on this one, on this layer. So I'm going to turn this layer off, and I'm going to go ahead and hit Command I, and that's going to inverse, and then I'm going to do Command L for levels, and I'm going to try to bring the darker ones forward. So what I'm trying to do, it might be hard to see, but I'm making the darker levels. Okay. Now I'll hit Command I again. It goes back. That looks good. The other thing that I'm going to do now is I'm going to mess with my layer, and I'm going to change the layer type rather than being normal, I'm going to try multiply. And no, multiply got rid of it, so I'm not going to do that one. I'll try color burn. Now you can see it goes through. Linear burn. So none of these are working how I thought it would. Well, let's try screen. There we go. Screen did it. So a lot of times it's just a test, but if you can see, we're going through it. Now we can trash. Actually, I don't want to trash this layer yet. So now I have my my pickleball planet kind of where I want it. I've got a little planet right there. I'm going to make this layer a little bigger, and I just want it to kind of pop up. Now you can see it's got a little bit of a vortex because we're doing a screen through it. See that? See how it screens it? So now what I'm going to probably need to do is I'm going to need to take my eraser tool, and I'm going to need to make it pretty big and really soft. And then the mode is going to be brush. The opacity is going to be like half of that. And there we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of make, you know how the sky isn't really, there's some lighter parts and darker parts. So now I'm just kind of using the brush to paint that. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to link these layers together. By how I did that is just hold down, click on one of them, hold down Command to hold them both together, and then hit the link button. Now I've got them linked. I'm going to do a new layer, and this new layer will be the content. So I'm going to put content, and I'm going to bring that above these two. And now from here, I'm going to go ahead and choose my rectangle tool. And let's go with white for now. We might change that. And I'm going to go ahead and just draw a rectangle. And we'll bring that down a little bit. That looks okay. It's pretty hard. So I'm going to add a gradient to that. So I'm going to do FX. Gradient overlay, and I'm going to go, let's try this crazy color. My dark color I'll have be yellow. My light color I'll have be just a lighter yellow. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. It's a little hard, so I'm going to scale it up, and then I'm going to bring the opacity down. Oh, a little too much. There we go. That'll work for now. Now, if I wanted it to be a radial, I can have it be a radial, and you can see, and here's the other thing, when you click, you can click and drag, and then this doesn't look too good, but if I reverse it, it's actually not too bad. And I think I'm going to do that. Bring that up here, scale it up, and you can also go a lot higher than 150. It only lets you drag the bar up to 150, but I can go to 200 or 2000. Oh, that was weird. It was saying it wouldn't let you, but you can. You can go up a lot higher than that. Interesting. Anyway, there we go. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select it again, and I'm going to give this a little bit of a border, so it's kind of floating. And so now this is the great thing about Photoshop. If you're doing stuff you really don't think it looks that great or whatever, you can go ahead and turn things off. This thing's bothering me now, so I'm going to just turn that off, and then that will allow me to bring this up a little bit higher, because I want to put some social media icons right there. The other thing is I'm not digging the gradient color, so I'm going to go with a safer color, and that safe color would be like black and grays, maybe some blues, but I'm going to go darker because it's just a little, it just doesn't fit right. And that's the great thing about playing with Photoshop. As you do this, you find what looks good, what doesn't. I'm not digging also the actual style. I want it to be a linear. I think linear looks better, and the opacity needs to go back up because it's giving me a grade. There we go. Now You say, well, it's black. Well, it is, so I need to go back in and adjust. That looks pretty good. And then we'll go ahead and reverse it. And bring the scale down just a little. Oh, not too much. Yeah, I like that. Now it's not so bam in your face, and if you move that off, that's pretty cool. That works all right. Now let's just give it a little bit of a stroke of blue. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this again, go ahead and do stroke. And the stroke, I'm going to choose a darker blue. Looks good, and I don't really want to make it bigger. The other thing is, see how it's wrapping going around? I don't want it to do that. I want it to be sharp. So I'm going to do it to the inside as the position. So now it's sharp. That looks better. So now if I take it off that layer, that's pretty cool. That's looking a lot better. Now the other thing I want to do is I want to get some social media. But remember, as you're working with your projects, always to save. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to call it eBlast, and I'm just going to save it on my desktop for right now. Okay, so now I've got it saved. It's starting to come together. The only thing we've really brought in so far is the logo. And now let's go ahead and what do we want to do? I think the next thing that we do is let's add some text. And I have another one just for time. I have another email. So I'll go ahead and open that up so that, well, just so that we've got the text that we want. Because I don't want to, and this would be more of a like a tips and tricks type eBlast. I'm not trying to sell anything on this. I just want people to see how to how to play pickleball or whatever. Now notice that when I clicked on this and I chose white, before it didn't change over. I just double clicked and it should have flopped over. It didn't do it. So warm up before you play. So that's something to talk about. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the social media icons, and I have those in a file already. So I'll go ahead and bring those over as well. So go ahead and drop them on here, and you can see they're just untitled. So the other thing is I want to scale them all down. They're way too big. I want them to go like right here smaller. So I'm just going to, while they're all connected, I'm going to go ahead and link them. And you know what, I'm not going to link them yet because there's a few of them that they're not spaced correctly. So I'm going to put that right there. And then I'm going to click off of here, hold down Command, and I'm going to move these over just a little bit so that they look better spaced, because before they didn't look so spaced. And all I'm doing to flip through layers is hold down the Command button and then click on the image, and it's jumping to that layer. So now that I've got all those, I'm going to go ahead and link them. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm just to keep my layers smaller is I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder. Call this folder social media, and then I'm going to take these and drop them in there. So now I can drop it down and they're on there. Now with all of them highlighted, I did a Command T for transform to make it smaller, and that looks a lot better. I might even put them up here or down here. Doesn't really matter. We can play with them, so that looks pretty good. The other thing is I'm going to want to add some effects to this probably, so I'm not necessarily wanting to do an effect on all of them, so I'm just going to merge it. And to do that, I just do Command E, And now I have one layer. I'll just call it social media. And you only want to do this really if you know that you're not going to be tweaking this. If not, I recommend you keep them as separate layers. But because I know what I'm going to do with it and it doesn't really matter, I'm not going to do it. Now I'm just adding, I don't want a color overlay. I want to do an outer glow. I'm adding an outer glow to this. And with this outer glow, I'll make sure that it is white and that the opacity is up a little bit. And I'm going to drop the noise down, bring the spread up just a little and the size down just so that they glow just enough. So that looks good. So now I've got some social media. It doesn't really fit right there, so I'm going to move it right here. The other thing you can do also, if it was not exactly lined up, is you could cut the image, but it's fine how it is. So I'm going to leave those right there. And now I'm going to bring in some text, and this text is just some bullet points. So I brought in the text. Now what I want to do is make it smaller, but before I do that, you can see that it's black. Let's make it, let's make it white. So I'm going to highlight all of it, but instead of how it is right now is it's formatted, so if I scale it, it's gonna shrink down, but it doesn't wrap, and that's fine, except for maybe I want to have text wrap. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to highlight all of it, cut it so it's off of this layer. I'm going to delete the layer, and I'm going to get the text tool, and I'm going to click and drag, and then I'm going to paste the text in like that. Now that I've done that, it's dynamic. So if I do it, let's go back. That didn't work. Something happened. Let me go back into my text tool. And I don't know if you need to keep the bounding box open when you're doing it, because it doesn't seem to be working right. Oh, there we go. That's doing it. Okay, so for some reason this bounding box, oh, you know what, it's probably because I needed to be on, yeah, that's right, I needed to be on the text tool itself so that it knows, hey, you're on the text tool to edit. So there we go. That's how you can dynamically change your text. Now, I'm not going to do that either because this is way too much stuff. So what I'm going to do is just delete it, because no one's going to read that. That's an email for way too much. So maybe what I'll do is I will duplicate this layer and warm up before you play. Let's do some stretches. Let's see, do we want to say stretches? See, this is where I probably should just have stuff. You know what I'll do is I'm just going to take a couple sentences off of it. So we'll go back to my text. It says you want to prime your heart and lung, bouncing around. Okay, there we go. That looks good enough. That's a good bullet point. So I copied that. Now I'll go ahead and I'm just clicking. I'm not clicking and dragging, and I'm going to paste. So that's going to be my first text right there. And the next thing is twisting. Let's talk about some action. This is more stretching. This is kind of an old man sport, so that's why there's a lot of stretching and this and that. So that's looking good, and warming up your shoulders. And there we go. So now I actually have some text, and I put them on 3 different layers on purpose because I'm using them as bullet points. Deleted the other file. So there we go. I have my text now. So now what I'm going to do is line it up. I'm I'm going to put a bullet point, holding down Option and then hitting the number 8 will create a bullet point. And I don't know where it's going to break yet, so I'm going to keep these all as one line for a minute. Okay, and Option 8, another bullet point. And Option 8, another bullet point, and I'm going to delete the extra space. Okay, you might say, well, why don't you just put it all in one and then work with your character tool palette to line them up in that? Well, I could, but I'm not going to. Everyone has their ways of doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and make this. So it doesn't look like this font is very big, but actually when they get the email, it's going to be like this. So it's plenty big as far as to read. So I'm just going to leave it the size it is. And then the one thing that I want to do is I'm going to put a picture here. So I'm going to go ahead and just format it like that. This works just perfect for what I'm doing. I'm going to bring a guide out so I'm not eyeballing the bullet points. And the way I brought a guide out is just click on the ruler and drag out. If you hold down Option, it changes to horizontal. So, and to move it back, you can just drag it back over the ruler. Okay, and then I'm going to go back in here. And we'll do one more. Okay, so this is lined up. Okay, it's not the most pretty, but then again, it's just a quick design that I'm going to send out, and it should be fine for what I'm going to do with this pickleball stuff. You know, now that I think about it, I think I'm going to put this all in one box. So go ahead, drag my layer, put it in there, do the same with this one, just because I want it close, you know. So okay. Okay, kind of wasted time on that, but this is just a little bit easier actually for adjusting. So, and I'm just cutting these out, just using the Command X to cut and then paste them back in. Okay, that looks better. Now I'll go back to the text tool and I'll bring this in. There we go. Great. Okay, so now that I've got this, I'm going to go ahead, click back in here. Just do a little bit so it at least looks a little bit better when you line it up. Okay. Great. Warm up before you play. So we got some text in there now. Let's go ahead. I'm just making it a little smaller so we can see it all again. So we got some text in there. I'm going to go ahead and move the guide off. Now I want this to be centered. And I might change my mind again depending on how I lay this stuff out. So I've got another little photo here. Me playing a little pickleball. So I'm going to put it right there. And now let's see here. got some weird spaces in here. Okay. And don't forget, if you have more stuff, you might have more in there. Okay, that looks pretty good. It's still not very straight as far as because of the spaces. So let's put those in there. Let me zoom in. Okay. Now, okay, you know, that'll work. Still is a lot of text, and you know, if I really okay, I don't really want to, but I'm gonna go ahead and fix these spaces. And I'm just using the space bar here. So, okay. It only took about an hour, but now my text looks great. Works perfect. Got my picture in here. I already put a stroke on it and a drop shadow. We don't need the drop shadow. If you want to get rid of it, you can click on it, drag it to the garbage. That gets rid of that effect. It's a little big, so I'm going to bring it down just to give it a little bit more space. And this is very boxy. It's a boxy layout and design, but it'll work. So now I just want to make a few buttons and add a few other little pieces, and then we'll be good to go. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a paddle. A pickleball paddle, and I've got one in here somewhere. Let me see. Okay, I've got a paddle right here. So here's a paddle. Get rid of that background. I'm using the magic wand tool right now, and I'm deleting that, highlighting everything, and then pasting it. So here's a paddle, and I'm going to have that kind of overlap. Maybe even overlap on this side. I don't know yet. No, let's put it down here. Okay, and there we go. Got my paddle. Let's turn it to an angle just a little bit, just to break up all the square that's on it. That looks pretty good. Let's drop it down a little, and we'll go ahead and go to the effects and add a outer glow. This outer glow, let's change it to a blue, because that is blue, and we'll go ahead and make it a little bigger and do the range. There we go. That's pretty cool. Probably should have done a yellow or something to accent it. You know, let's do that. Let's change. This will be fun. Let's change this to yellow. So I'm going to go to Image, and I'm going to Adjustments, and I'm going to go to Replace Color. And here I'm going to click on that, and that has that color, and I'm going to replace it and make a blue, or I mean a yellow, excuse me. Okay, and let's make it bright yellow. Boom. That looks good. Now that was how easy we can change in Photoshop colors before, after. And the other thing I'm going to change is that outer glow now can be a yellow as well. There we go. So now I've got my paddle, I've got a little bit of information. Let's make a button. So I'm going to click and do a rounded rectangle, and I'm going to use I'm going to use this yellow. It kind of stands out. No, I'm going to use red just to throw in, or maybe blue, I don't know. So I'm going to drag a button right here. And I don't know if I'm going to use yellow or not. Let's do another button as well. I'm going to go ahead and bring in another guide just so that it's the same. And you know, the other thing too is if you're not really quite sure what it is, just duplicate the layer. That's the easiest. And let's do one more. Why not, right? I'm sure I can make some stuff up. Okay, so now that I have these, now it's starting to look like a little bit of an e-blast. So I'm going to go ahead and save again because we haven't done that forever. I'm going to remove the guides. And now that my guides are gone, I'm going to have this a gradient. I like the yellow, but it's too plain of a yellow. So I'm going to do a gradient overlay. And my gradient overlay is going to be that yellow. And it's going to be another yellow. But it's going to be more of an orangey yellow. And I'm going to click on that and I'm going to swap them. I could just do, that looks good. The size, where's the size? Oh, just so you know, we're adjusting this one right here. Okay, so, and it needs to have actually even a more orange so that you can see it a little better. And opacity, we're going to drop down. Scale. There we go. That looks great. Now I don't have to go back and do all of these again. Now I can just go. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to do one other thing. I'm going to go ahead and add a stroke. And the stroke color is going to be white. And it's going to be a little bigger, like that. There we go. Now I'm going to right click on this layer and I'm going to do copy layer style, and I'm going to click on these and hold down shift and paste layer style. So now I've pasted what I made on this first one on all of them. Again, it's getting a little bit messy. So, and all of this copied inside the social media. I didn't intend for that to happen. So I'm going to click on these three. And it might even be these four, actually. And I'm going to drag them outside or above the social media. So now when I close, it didn't, well, it reordered them, but it didn't move it how I want. So let's do it again. I'm going to hold down, get these three out first. Okay, that put them above it. I'm going to add another folder, call this one buttons. And it's important when you're doing an e-blast or something like this to use buttons. In the next video, because I've done this one forever, in the next video we'll continue on.